You can catch a dream, become a human being.
Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm AI David Bowles, and along with our Crackbot AI creative team, we have invented a certain story just for you. In Circles, the boy who loved circles, embracing life's geometry in Lenny's Garden of Shapes. And now, the story begins.
Once in a verdant valley, cradled by ancient whispering forests, lived a boy named Lenny, whose world was shaped quite literally by circles. From the tender age of 3, Lenny was mesmerized by the perfection of this shape. He would spend hours spinning in circles, his laughter echoing through the trees, and he would blow soap bubbles, marveling at their round symmetry as they caught the sunlight. Lenny's love for circles wasn't just a fleeting childhood fancy. It was the lens through which he viewed life. He saw the world in the roundness of fruits, the cycles of the seasons, and even in the moon's waxing and waning. His room was a museum of circular artifacts, wheels from broken toys, coins from distant lands, and even a collection of rings of all sizes. As Lenny grew, so did his perception of the world. One day, while wandering through the village market, he stumbled upon a carpenter's stall. There, amidst the scent of sawdust and wood, Lenny's eyes fell upon shapes he had never pondered before, rectangles and squares. He was fascinated by their sharp angles and straight lines, so different from the soft curves of his beloved circles. This discovery sparked a new passion in Lenny. He began to study geometry, delving into the mysteries of shapes and forms. He learned how the right angles of a square could offer stability and how the elongated sides of a rectangle could provide balance. Lenny's world, once a continuous loop of circles, now expanded into a kaleidoscope of geometric wonders. Years turned to decades, and Lenny, now an old man with a silvery beard, sat in his study surrounded by his geometric creations. It was then, in the quiet twilight of his life, that he realized something profound. In his pursuit of new shapes and forms, he had left behind a trail of unfinished circles, ideas not pursued, dreams not chased, and wishes not uttered. With a resolve as firm as the oaks outside his window, Lenny set out to close these circles. He revisited old sketches and breathed life into them. He reached out to childhood friends with whom he had lost touch, rekindling bonds that had once been strong. He even returned to his old habit of blowing bubbles, watching them float away, symbolizing dreams he was finally chasing. In his want to close these open circles, Lenny learned a valuable lesson. Life, much like geometry, is not about sticking to one shape or form. It's about the harmony between the different shapes we encounter and create. The circles of his youth, the squares and rectangles of his adulthood, and the myriad shapes he discovered later all had their place in the kindness of his life. Lenny's final years were spent in contentment, surrounded by a world that was no longer just circular, but wonderfully diverse in its geometry. And when he finally closed his last circle, Lenny did so with a smile, knowing that his life, a mosaic of shapes and experiences, was complete. In the valley where Lenny once lived, they say that on certain moonlit nights, you can see bubbles floating through the air, shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow. A silent testament to a life well lived and a task completed. As the days in the valley continued to unfold, the story of Lenny, the boy who loved circles, became a legend whispered among the people. Children would run through the meadows spinning in circles, laughing as Lenny once did, while the elders watched, their eyes gleaming with a mix of nostalgia and wonder. Meanwhile, Lenny, in his humble abode, surrounded by his geometric treasures, embarked on his final project. He decided to create a garden, a living testament to his life's honor. This garden, unlike any other, would be a fusion of all the shapes and forms he had loved and learned about. There would be circular ponds, rectangular pathways, triangular flower beds, and even a hexagonal gazebo. As Lenny toiled in his garden, something magical began to happen. The people of the valley, drawn by the beauty and uniqueness of his creation, started to visit. They would walk along the pathways, marveling at the harmonious blend of shapes. Children would gaze in awe at the ponds, where Lenny would sometimes blow bubbles, telling stories of his adventures with circles and beyond. The garden became a place of gathering, a space where the old and the young, the dreamers and the doers came together. Lenny would often be seen, a contented smile on his face, sharing his wisdom about the shapes of life. He taught them that, like his garden, life was a blend of many forms. Moments of circular joy, periods of rectangular stability, and instances of triangular challenges. As Lenny aged, his steps grew slower, but his eyes remained bright with the joy of sharing his knowledge. The garden, too, flourished, becoming a symbol of unity and diversity. People began to bring their shapes to add to the garden. A young girl placed a star-shaped lantern. A carpenter contributed a diamond-shaped bench. And so it grew, a mosaic of the community's love and respect for Lenny. In his final days, Lenny would sit in his hexagonal gazebo, his gaze sweeping over the garden, a living warmth of his life's work. He realized that his greatest achievement wasn't just the closing of his own circles, but inspiring others to see the beauty in all shapes of life. When Lenny passed away, the valley mourned, but they also celebrated. They celebrated a life that had turned a love for circles into a legacy of learning and unity. Every year on the anniversary of his passing, the people of the valley would gather in Lenny's garden, now known as the Garden of Shapes, to honor his memory. They would tell stories, blow bubbles, and marvel at the garden, which continued to grow and change, just like the shapes in Lenny's beloved geometry. And in the heart of the garden, right in the center of the hexagonal gazebo, stood a statue of Lenny with a smile that seemed to say, life is an endless combination of shapes. Embrace them all. And so the legend of Lenny, the boy who loved circles, lived on, not just in the valley, but in the hearts of all who believed in the beauty of life's diverse shapes. In the years that followed, Lenny's Garden of Shapes became more than just a local wonder. It transformed into a place of pilgrimage for those seeking inspiration and wisdom. People from distant lands began to visit, each drawn by the legend of the boy who had embraced the geometry of life. The garden, under the loving care of the villagers, evolved with each passing season. It became a living chronicle, not just of Lenny's love, but of the community's growth and unity. Artists, poets, and thinkers frequented the garden, finding within its geometry the muses for their creations. The ponds reflected the changing skies. The pathways led to quiet nooks for contemplation. And the plants and flowers bloomed in a riot of colors, each shape contributing to the harmony of the whole. Among the visitors was a young girl named Aria, who was captivated by the legend of Lenny. She spent days in the garden sketching and writing, deeply moved by the way the shapes came together in a beautiful symphony. Inspired by Lenny's story, Aria began a project of her own. She wanted to capture the essence of the Garden of Shapes, to share its beauty and wisdom with the world. Aria worked tirelessly, her sketches and words, weaving together the tales of Lenny and the people of the valley. Her project turned into a book titled The Geometry of Life, Lenny's Legacy. When it was published, it became an instant sensation, touching the hearts of many and spreading the story of Lenny and his garden across the globe. The book brought even more visitors to the valley, each seeking to experience the magic of the Garden of Shapes. The garden's fame helped the village prosper as quaint cafes, bookshops, and art galleries opened, all inspired by the themes of geometry and nature. As the years passed, the Garden of Shapes became a symbol of hope and unity. It was a place where differences were not just accepted, but celebrated. In this garden, every shape, every form had its place and purpose, just as Lenny had envisioned. The garden's paths were walked by people of all ages and from all walks of life, each finding their own meaning in the interplay of shapes and nature. On the garden's 50th anniversary, a grand celebration was held. People from around the world gathered, sharing stories of how Lenny and his garden had influenced their lives. The air was filled with music, laughter, and the soft sound of bubbles floating skyward, shimmering in the sunlight. As night fell, the community gathered in the garden, lanterns of various shapes and sizes lighting up the night. A moment of silence was observed, a tribute to Lenny, the boy who had taught them all to see the beauty in life's geometry. In that moment, under the starry sky, the Garden of Shapes was not just a testament to a boy's love for circles, but a beacon of inspiration, showing the world that in the diversity of shapes and experiences lies the true beauty of life. And so the story of Lenny, the boy who loved circles and inspired a world of shapes, continued to echo through time, a timeless tale of curiosity, growth, and unity. The Garden of Shapes, with its ever-evolving glory of geometry and nature, stood as a lasting reminder that life in all its forms and shapes is a wonder to behold and cherish.
For the Human Meme Podcast, I'm AI David Bowles, wishing you a kind evening and an ever-eventful tomorrow. Be a human meme.
Ooh, you can't catch a dream. Become a human being.